All right, this is the second video of Chapter 9 lecture about technology and leisure. And in this video, we're going to talk about how pervasive technology is in our life and leisure life specifically. Pervasive as in it's everywhere, it's embedded, we are deeply dependent on it to technology. So for example, the chapter make a point that information technology IT is now infused in almost every aspect of life, of course, including leisure. Now, I'm assuming you're indoors somewhere. I want you to count how many technology do you have in your room? I mean, can you even count? What about how many ITs, information technology? Well, the things that does information technology, smartphones, maybe iPad, a laptop, or wearable like Apple Watch or anything related to that. How many do you have? How many do you have in your house, maybe? And how many of them? How many of the technology that you have in your room are related to leisure? Maybe I would assume a lot of them, right? And even when you get out of the house, get out of your town to get arguably unplugged, right? Sometimes, nature, just no email messages from Shin, I just want to get away from it. That's cool. But when you go there in the nature on a downright picture, you see still like maybe something like a Wi-Fi hotspot and you go like, really? We are so connected, plugged, and the technology is ubiquitous. It's not necessarily a good thing, but we are. Chapter tried to make a point about how wearable technology does, for example, Apple Watch and kind of thing, enable us to work and play anytime, anywhere, at the same time, according to them. Thanks to this, and because of this, these technologies, work and leisure are completely blurred, meshed together, like ingredients in a blender. It's like in, liquid soup. I disagree. The research and data I'm seeing is not accurate representation of the facts and data that I'm seeing, and tell you why. Yes, leisure and work are almost happening sometimes simultaneously, like you are studying, but also you're putting music on a Spotify to just make the study better. There's the main activity and sub-activity, and sometimes we do quote-unquote multitask. I'm not saying that's a good idea, but people do. And also people go back and forth. For example, you study homework, 30 minutes reading, and then you're looking forward to, 5 minutes, 10 minutes of funny video session on a TikTok or YouTube, right? To just get relaxed, to get a break and go back to the study. There's that switch. However, people are very, very aware that the data, for example, Dr. Gordon Walker, who retired from here last year, 2 years ago, sorry. Some of the data he was showing was that actually Edmonton walkers, people who work in the industry, they have clear idea in terms of experience, intrinsic motivation, need satisfaction, freedom, and all that. People have a clear distinction between work and leisure. And when I tracked students, daily activity, like every day, like I asked them, like I bugged them basically 7 times short surveys to collect what they're doing, collect the information about what they're doing, how they're feeling, and all that kind of stuff. Again, the same thing. They're increasingly aware whether something is leisure or not leisure. They never say really, oh, I don't know, really, or, both. Distinction was very clear. And their psychological experience, again, was very clear. And think about yourself. When you study for 30 minutes, next 30 minutes is going to be the work. Not necessarily so fun, but maybe interesting, hopefully. Maybe that's meaningful, right? Maybe challenging. You're aware of that. And then, or maybe boring, hope not. And then next 5 minutes after that, you're going to watch, YouTube or TikTok or whatever. You're going to have fun, right? That pleasure, the humor, a laughter comes with it. You're very aware of that too. So to me, things are not meshed together like a soup. It's more like a pie that are cut. And the change that technology brought in was this, like in the right bottom picture. So on the right side, right top, especially, bigger pie. It was like this before the technology, 1980s, maybe 1970s, that, your parents or grandparents' time, that people spend chunks of time, maybe like sleep, eat breakfast, get ready to work, commute and do work, and lunch break and work, and come back to dinner, family time, socializing, sleep. It's chunks of time. The pie, each slice of pie was big. If each slice of pie is activity, one activity, right? Now, on the left side, the pies are sliced more small. It's maybe like our life right now with the technology, that we're changing between work and leisure. We work, and then we have this 5 minutes of like Facebooking, yeah, my boss doesn't see me, so I'm gonna just do that a little bit. Have fun, that's okay. There is no harm. And then go back to the work again, right? Oh, I'm gonna do homework, and then, put the music on. I'm gonna watch TikTok for the next 10 minutes to just take a break. So on and so forth. That switch turn on and off, leisure and non-leisure, it's more quick because of these things, because of these technology. So it's not that everything is, kind of together and blended together, but it's more like this pie. That's the data that I'm seeing. In terms of how pervasive technology is in our life, one of the important concepts and phenomena is called prosumer. And this is not an old concept, actually. I know, for example, in the marketing field, we're talking about this like for at least 30, 40 years, really. Well, maybe 20 to 30 years at least. And the chapter got it wrong. Chapter started to define this in terms of professional knowledge, yada, yada, yada. That's not really true. The basic definition of prosumer is that, like this one, in Oxford Dictionary here, prospective consumer who is involved in the design. So consumer, people who buy, people who use stuff, who is involved in the design, manufacturing, or development of product and service. So what prosumer means is basically the mixture of consumer and producer, the people who create stuff of the same thing what they're consuming. And chapter also make later on, more accurate point that prosumer is a person who consumes and produces media, but all media is just one type of the product and services. Okay, so prosumer applies to many other things. However, textbook is right that it's more and more evident. This concept is very important in terms of media, especially social media. That's a game changer compared to the previous time, if you think about it. Like, for example, previous traditional media, like a TV companies produce stuff, hoping that it's going to be a hit, and then give it to you. You consume. You only consume, pretty much, right? But social media is very different paradigm, different thinking. Because we, the consumer, also produce the content. We post, we put the picture, we put the video on it. Other people, hopefully, will consume that and like it, right? So we are both producers and consumers. That's that's epitome. That's a great example of prosumer. And that leads to, of course, social media. And it's not an easy thing to define. It's really fuzzy because there's a new types of social media really comes up every year. But broadly speaking, it's electronic mediated communication tool whereby people can create and share information about themselves. And I put the question mark themselves here because we could, I wouldn't say we lie about it, but we lie about ourselves on social media, but there's some level of, cleaning and exaggeration sometimes one way or another. So we're going to talk about that in the next slides, but that's a little tricky part. But the main activities of social media are microblogging, social networking, photo and video sharing, of course, like TikTok, Snapchat, and those things, and social gaming sometimes. Those things have some games components to it too. And again, we both produce and consume the content. So it's, we are consumers here, really. And some of the people who are like influencers who are, more on the producing side, other people more on the consuming side. But by definition, we're both. And textbook also make an important point that the social media played a very important roles in social change and potentially drastically influencing quality of life and well-being in certain regions and countries, such as the Arab Spring in early 2010s. We have seen, some of the Facebook and Twitters were used to basically, facilitate and trigger revolution in a certain area. Now, on a more individual level, though, it does impact our leisure. It is our leisure. Social media is, and it impacts our happiness. Because social media let us show certain aspects of ourselves that we want people to see, right? With a potentially minor or major exaggeration. For example, maybe you've seen this meme. Well, meme is, again, another technology that we enjoy. On the top side, maybe a couple is going to some, working out, hiking, or, maybe trip. And then you see those nice picture and people, there's heart marks, so many, and people like it and people comment on it. Oh, that's so nice. That's so lovely. And in the real world, maybe they had a fight and actually they're shouting to each other. We don't show that. So social media definitely influenced our identity, the sense of who we are, and also identity expression, the way we express that identity. And then finally, well-being, relationship with significant others, our satisfaction, the emotions that are influenced. And of course, not just positively. And we're going to talk about that issue soon. Because social media could also cause things like anxiety, stress, obsession. Maybe you've been there. You have experienced these things because of social media. Research has actually looked at something called Facebook depression. Maybe you guys are over it because, I heard that your generation doesn't necessarily use Facebook. Is that true? You're more, Snapchat and TikTok and Instagram people, maybe not. But, the idea stays the same, I think. When you post something, you go like, did anyone, 5 minutes after you're posting your picture, you go like, oh, did anyone like my photo? How many people like my photo? And nobody liked your photo. And you go like, why nobody's liking my photos? It drives you nuts. These researcher, Jelinchik et al., colleagues in 2013, they found there's actually no direct relationship between Facebook use, just a normal, generally whatever Facebook use, and depression. However, later on, Tandok and colleagues found that Facebook surveillance, as in they're kind of dwelling on Facebook, they're just, checking Facebook constantly, long time, was related to depression is through Facebook, what they call Facebook envy, as in like negative, jealous, feeling. For example, you look at your friends, best friends posting some sort of like a trip photo. Or maybe Shin is posting another picture of his fantastic cooking stuff, dishes he made, and you're like, oh, he's enough. That envy. If you have that surveillance tendency, and you feel that envy, and that's going to lead to depression, more likely. So it's not for everybody, but those who do the surveillance, Facebook surveillance, social media surveillance, and that envy, the negative emotion, and also some social comparison. Probably you feel like you're sort of like less than because they're doing something great. But again, social media has this tendency to exaggerate things. People will only show positive aspect. So this envy is not necessarily so uncommon thing, right? That by nature, social media makes us prone to this envy. And if you're really interested in this topic about social media, it's the most important probably right now topic, right? Maybe you have watched this show or movie actually called The Social Dilemma, right? It's actually a documentary category, but I don't call it actually a documentary. But I watched it. My wife said, like, hey, this is supposed to be pretty good. You want to watch it? It was pretty good. It's thought-provoking, and it's nothing really new. It doesn't talk about new issues per se, but it presents in such a way that it makes us really think. I think that's what it is. Reading week is coming up, and I think many of you kind of want to, have a list of Netflix shows and everything that you want to watch. So maybe you can add this. It's a leisurely thing that you can do, but it can be good for your education. So it's a one stone, two birds kind of situation. Just a quick note though at the bottom. I've watched it, and I can tell you, well, it's good. I think it's good content, ideas, but some of the things are kind of exaggerated. And I'm not going to spoil the story for you. But for example, social media algorithm, the equation, the machine learning is represented in a very misleading way from my perspective, because I do some of the statistics that are kind of remotely related to machine learning. So I know just a bit about machine learning. And I know even from that superficial knowledge that I have, I know that's very misleading representation as well, to be honest. It freaks us out more so, the way that it's described here. So don't get too worried so much, but it's a really thought-provoking. I think it's a very, nice movie to watch and think about, okay? So I'm gonna stop here the second video, and I will see you in a third video.